Hello there, geeks and gamers. I'm Marc the Cyborg, and today I'd like to talk to you about a game I've been playing which I think you might enjoy. So without further ado, The Wonderful 101 was originally released as a Wii U exclusive in August 2013, which is why you probably haven't played it. It was an original IP releasing on the least successful Nintendo platform since the Virtual Boy, a few months before the launch of PS4 and Xbox One. Even with the weight of Platinum Games, one of my personal favorite developers behind it, this chibi art, Sentai superhero action game failed to find an audience. Sentai is a Japanese word which means squad or team and is used to describe the genre which Power Rangers and Voltron belong to, and is not to be confused with hentai, which is something else. However, the game was loved by the people who did find it, including Matthewmatosis, who is one of the best, if not the best, game critic on YouTube. My love of Platinum and my respect for Matthewmatosis has had this game on my radar for a while, and a few months ago, Platinum announced that they were kickstarting this self-published remaster and not only bringing it to the Nintendo Switch, but also to PS4 and Steam. So here's the disclosure warning: I financially backed this game while it was technically still in development, I do not stand to profit from its success, and I plan to discuss both its positive and negative qualities with as little bias as possible, other than that I love most of Platinum's catalog. However, because I backed the Kickstarter, I did get a Steam code a week and a half before the public launch of the game, so here it is everybody, the first Geeks and Gamers review, which is going up on a game's actual release day. The Wonderful 101 may look like a bright, colorful kids game, but hidden behind the tiny, chibi character models and toy-like aesthetic is a very deep, complex, and challenging action game. The mostly fixed, isometric camera angle might make you think otherwise, but this game has a shocking amount in common with games like Bayonetta and Devil May Cry, only with less convincing waifus. Like those two games, Wonderful 101 was also directed by Hideki Kamiya, and it's something of a spoof of and a love letter to his previous works. While you're controlling a very large group of characters rather than just one, the game is fundamentally a series of character action battles which force you to kill a group of enemies before moving on to the next and solving a puzzle or two along your way to a boss, with some minigames sprinkled in for good measure. Where the Wonderful 101 carves out its own identity is in how you control your team of superheroes, and more specifically, how you change your weapons. In order to switch between weapons in the Wonderful 101, you have to draw shapes with the right analog stick, not unlike the way you'd solve puzzles in Kamiya's wolf-led Zelda-like game Okami. The size at which you draw the shape changes not only the physical size of your weapon, but also its attack power and speed. The larger forms of each weapon require your team to have more united members and more power on your unite gauge, as well as more physical space in which to draw your intended shape. If your eyes are glazing over, try to stay with me, because this game sounds incredibly complex to explain, but I promise it's simpler than it sounds and it does eventually click while you're playing it. Through most of the game, the shapes you need to know are a simple circle to create a fist, a simple line to create a sword, an L shape to create a gun, a wavy line to create a whip, a line with a circle at the end to create a hammer, a circle with a line at the end to create a bomb, and a zigzag to create claws. The system is certainly not perfect, and some shapes are definitely far easier to draw than others, but luckily the game automatically snaps into slow motion whenever you begin to draw a shape. The skill curve for learning the shapes is also very gradual, as it takes most of the first half of the game for you to acquire these weapons, and usually when you gain a new team member / weapon, the rest of that level is spent teaching you how to properly use your new tools, both in combat and for puzzles. The Red Fist doesn't have great range, but it does solid damage and has the ability to absorb fire and then shoot fireballs. It can also be used to grab onto and then turn cogs, which solve puzzles and reveal secrets. The Blue Sword has much better range, can absorb lightning attacks and deflect beam attacks. The green guns have great range and are often a fairly solid bet if you want to deal some consistent damage from a safe distance. They can also be used to hit switches from afar. The pink whip has comparable range to the sword, but better targeting, and the added benefit of being able to rip off spiky armor from foes and swing across gaps Castlevania 4 style. The yellow hammer does the most damage and can protect you from overhead attacks if you hold it steady without attacking. It can also smash through weak floors and sink the team down through water. The White Claw attacks super fast with a long combo adding a freeze effect, and outside of combat it can tear open some doors or walls, and more importantly be used to climb walls and ceilings. Finally, the Black Bombs create a bubble which slows down time, allowing you to hit fast moving enemies as well as do more damage to other enemies. You can also slow down environmental obstacles, letting you cross them safely. There are a few more bonus weapons you gain throughout the campaign, but to talk about them now would spoil some of the major story moments, so we'll leave them alone for the time being. There are also some skills which you unlock with the currency you earn through combat and finding secrets, and if you'd like to save yourself a gigantic headache, buy Unite Guts and Unite Spring as soon as humanly possible. These are basically your block and dodge moves, and without them, you're going to get rocked early and often. Unite Camp is also incredibly useful as it will instantly refill your Unite gauge and let you set up some massive damage combos when you're proficient with it. And I neglected to buy it until like mission 7 of 9, so don't make my mistake, get it early. There are also power-ups to buy which provide very useful advantages, with my favorite being the one which adds hero time to perfect dodges, which is just exactly witch time from Bayonetta, right down to the ticking clock overlay animation. But hey, if the clock's not broken, don't fix it. There are a lot of these power-ups and you can equip a few of them at a time, so experiment with them and you'll find the combination which best suits your personal playstyle. While the learning curve for the weapons, skills, and power-ups is gradual, the game is also quite challenging, or very easy, depending on how you want to play it. Difficulty is approached in a very interesting way in the Wonderful 101. The continue system essentially makes it impossible for you to totally fail. If you die and hit yes on the continue screen, you'll continue from nearly the exact spot where you left off with full health, but with all the damage you've already dealt to enemies still intact. If you want to finish the Wonderful 101 story and don't care how you get there, you will, but you'll be seeing a lot of the consolation prize ratings, which felt to me like a football to the groin every time I got one. Where the meat of the challenge in the game lies is in the rating system. In every section of the game, you're given a rating based on your time, combo, and damage taken. You also lose a massive amount of points for using items, including healing items, and if you use one of the aforementioned continues, you're essentially resigning yourself to the dreaded consolation prize. It wasn't long before I stopped looking at the game as a cakewalk I could breeze through, and instead, on the same difficulty mode, started forcing myself to perform at a high level, abstain from any and all assistive items, and chase those sweet, sweet, pure platinum trophies. It's in this trophy system that the game's replay value shows itself. The level of mastery required to hit pure platinum on every one of the game's encounters is kind of incredible, and I found myself fist pumping every time I managed to snag one, which sadly was not very often. The game is absolutely littered with secret areas, secret encounters, and items. So while I spent about 25 hours on my first run, a fair amount of which was spent rebooting sections from the title menu because I got killed and refused to say yes to continuing, I could honestly see myself sinking several dozens, if not hundreds more hours into this game in order to earn those trophies. Or at least zero out my consolation prizes because those haunted me in my post-credits after action report. However, there are some cracks in the skill-based action game armor, and they come in the form of extremely inconsistent checkpoints and a bad retry reload system. As I mentioned earlier, my game time was about 25 hours, and while part of that was me constantly getting wrecked by the more difficult encounters, a good chunk of it was replaying gigantic sections which preceded those encounters because the checkpoint system in this game is inconsistent and often very frustrating. There were times when I defeated a difficult boss with very little damage taken, no items or continues used, and an epic combo count, then died during a Star Fox-like escape minigame which came out of nowhere. Not wanting to use a continue and spoil my rating, I kicked myself to the title menu, reloaded my last checkpoint, only to find that I was way back at the beginning of the difficult, multi-phase boss battle. The first problem with this system is the need to go all the way back to the title menu in order to retry a segment from scratch. I like the fact that people who don't want to engage in the rating system at all can limp their way across the finish line with the continue system, but for a game which seems to encourage perfectionism, to not have an easier way to reload a failed attempt is certainly strange. The fact that clear and obvious places for a checkpoint are ignored, like say the beginning of a minigame which has you use exactly none of the skill set you've been developing for the entire game, will certainly try many gamers' patience, even we dyed-in-the-wool get-good types. While those flaws might seem critical, they really don't derail the experience overall. They just might draw some players back from the brink of wanting to dive headfirst into chasing those pure platinum trophies. Even if you're not in it for the trophies or the test of Twitch skill, The Wonderful 101 is a very funny, exciting, and at times very heartfelt game loaded with memorable, well-written, and well-acted characters. The main protagonist of the game is Wonder Red, a new member of a superhero team called the Wonderful 100. Red is essentially Steve Rogers. He's a clean-cut, virtuous hero who is a born leader, and at the beginning of the game he is given command of an operation for the first time. Soon after, you're joined by wisecracking swordsman Wonder Blue, who quickly becomes apparent as a stand-in for Devil May Cry's Dante. French gunslinger Wonder Green joins the team next, and this chubby marksman provides a lot of the game's comic relief. In nearly every one of the game's cutscenes, his avatar is eating something different, and his joyful demeanor makes him quite likable. Wonder Pink is the final main member, and while she doesn't have a posh English accent or a rockin' X-Ray Girl-like body, she does have Bayonetta's same hairstyle. The other named members of the Wonderful 100 don't have as much screen time, but Wonder Yellow, Wonder Black, and Wonder White all have their own personalities and quirks and are used well as foils for the 4 main members. There are also nice little character touches which aren't related to the story at all, like Red's talent for, and insistence to, introduce characters in full whenever they appear.
If it isn't the heir to the throne of the roaming Rulo, leader of the space pirate band known across the universe as the Geizak, Prince Vorkin. If it isn't Immorta, Galactic Federation Police Special Weapons Tactics and Investigation Team Sector S45-1219. We've been waiting for you, Master of Ninjutsu, the wonderful one from the Shinshu Japan Field Office, Momoe Byakoi, aka Wonder White!
Red, are you like hiding a teleprompter somewhere?
Or Pink's over-the-top crush on villain Prince Vorkin.
Allies? Does the New York Fats ally with the Dizbong? I do as I please, when I please. Those who impede my progress are removed.
Vorky, why didn't you tell me there was someone else? I mean, I am open-minded. I wouldn't have cared.
Nobody cares!
But I think my favorite running gag was Red correcting Vorkin's mispronunciation of his name, as it seemed to get less animated each time, but he also never really lets it slide, and I found that really charming.
Warrior of Dearth, Blunder Red, was it?
Wonder Red.
And as I recall, you are Blunder Red.
Wonder Red.
Ah, the fearless Blunder Red, at last.
Wonder Red.
Fundamentally, the story is a light-hearted Sentai superhero tale, along the lines of Power Rangers or Voltron, but there are aspects of the story which get serious, and by the final third of the game, you're dealing with an apocalyptic, Avengers-style, fate-of-the-world conflict with a very satisfying conclusion. As far as the quality of this remaster goes, it's pretty good, not perfect, but definitely serviceable. A major thing to consider is that this port lacks both the second display and the touchscreen interface of the Wii U original. The latter isn't an issue at all, as drawing the shapes with the right stick isn't very tough for the most part, but the former is a bit wonky at times. Pressing select on the Xbox One controller, yeah, I know it's called the back button, but whatever, it'll always be the select button to me, brings up a picture-in-picture of what you'd normally see on the Wii U tablet. Sometimes this made the screen look cluttered, but there is an option to make it more or less transparent in the settings. Certain puzzles require you to know what's going on that screen, and it automatically becomes opaque in these instances, but you'll find that most of the time you just want it off. It really doesn't tell you anything very important on a moment-to-moment basis. On the technical side of things, I had the Steam version running in 4K, and it stayed at 59 frames per second consistently, with some unnoticeable dips to 58, but never any lower. The only reason I'm aware of this at all, and not just saying constant locked 60 frames a second, is because I had my frame counter on, and to the naked eye it appears to be a super consistent 60 frames a second. It is capped at 60 as well, so if you have a high refresh rate 144Hz monitor, don't expect to be playing this game at that frame rate because the game's capped at 60. The only technical issues I had were a few crashes, none of which lost me very much progress as they seem to only happen immediately after a save point, and a few circumstances in which the right stick didn't function. The latter issue sorted itself out every time without the need to reboot the program or even reload a checkpoint, but it still happens, so it's worth mentioning. I can't speak to the quality of the Switch or PS4 versions, but both of those machines, even the base model PS4, should be more than capable of running this game. It's not really that technically intense. There are certainly lots of individually animated characters on screen at any given time, but the fixed camera, small scope of each encounter, and simplistic art style keep the game's technical ambitions in check and will hopefully result in solid performance across all platforms. I just can't verify that at time of recording. However, I am considering picking up the Switch version, as I feel like it might be fun to pick up every now and then, maybe during travel, and attempting to snag one of those sweet pure platinum trophies. The Wonderful 101 launches May 19th for Switch, PS4, and Steam. If you're up for a quirky, hilarious superhero tale wrapped in a fantastic action game, throw on your Wonder Eyes mask and unite up!